So one type of adhesive, it wasn't on the list for the class, but you might already have it at home if you do a lot of crafting, and that is something like spray glue. And spray glue is great for large, flat pieces that you want to use where, or if you have specific delicate material where painting glue on it with a brush could damage it, sometimes spray glue is a good way to go. The most important thing is read the directions. A lot of spray glues you do not want to use indoors. So something like this has a lot of harmful vapors in the aerosol, and so you want to make sure that you use this outside, and also with most spray glues, do not store this near any heat source. Don't store it near your oven. Don't keep it outside next to like a generator that might spark or something like that. So anything that, or keep it away from candles. So just be careful. There are a couple types that you can use indoors, but again, make sure you read the directions thoroughly and make sure if it says use outside, definitely use it outside because it can affect the nervous system, most importantly, and cause dizziness and nausea. And that's why they say don't have paint, because it can damage your brain. So be very careful. Oh, another thing is with some types of glues, you might want to wear gloves. Some people are allergic to glue and adhesives. So if you are one that you react to glue, tape, and things like that, you might choose to wear protective gloves like latex gloves. Unless you're allergic to latex, then I think nitrile and there's another type of glove. I can't remember off the top of my head. So just protect yourself. Okay, so with things like spray glue, I'm not gonna do it all in here because I'm indoors. I usually set out newspaper, scrap cardboard from like old Amazon boxes or something to create a spray booth, and I'll take it outside. And what I'll do is I'll set it face down with the side I want to glue facing up, and they usually give you a direction for the distance to spray it with. So you want to, I think for some it says shake the can, some don't. Again, it depends on the brand. And usually you hold it about like almost a good 8 to 12 inches away rather than up close. So I just make sure when I spray that I start on the sides, not directly on here, and make sure I have an even stream of glue coming on before I cover this. And I might go over it once. Some people say twice. Some other kind where one layer is the repositionable, and the if you use more than like one layer, that might end up being more permanent. So I'll show. So for collaging, you can use liquid glues, and I sometimes suggest that, especially if you want something nice and flat and solid. Especially if you want something nice and flat and solid. And you'll need a few extra tools. I have a piece of the freezer paper, and I have a brush, I have a bone folder, and I have what I'm going to be gluing on this side. And so I always kind of keep a couple sheets of this around, and because it comes in rolls, I just tape down the sides so it won't curl up as I'm working. And I cut either an extra piece of the freezer paper, or I get wax paper or a silicone-like paper, parchment paper, that I can use for a second step that I'll show you shortly. Now here I have things like Mod Podge, matte medium, which you can use in painting, but this also can work as an adhesive. So you can actually just paint this on to like layer up collage as well. So if you got matte medium for painting, it acts double duty and can work for collaging. And so Mod Podge you might see at most craft stores. Nori paste you can also find. But Elmer's liquid glue, not the school glue. The glue wall can work. The thing is, there's a misconception that if you use more glue, things will stick better. This is not the case. In reality, you actually want to use just a thin amount of glue, because the best chemical bonds happen when there's just a thin layer of glue between the surface of your one piece and the surface of another piece. If there's a lot of glue, it's more like layers of glue sticking to each other. And sometimes that will cause things to break apart over time. So the biggest tips for gluing things for collage or chain collé is thin glue and pressure. So I have a little bit of nori paste, and this is a type of, I think, rice-based paste. And so you can kind of get a little small glob of it with like your palette knife, and you can add a tiny bit of water. And so it comes more gummy. So I'll just put this here. But you can add a little bit of water to it to make it a little bit more spreadable. And so I will cover the whole thing uniformly with glue once I get it to a consistency I want. And I use things like Dixie cups. Sometimes I use like the lids to the things I'm using for like my old glass jars. I just use whatever I have on hand. Is it professional? I don't know, but probably not. But I just, you know, make use of, I like to recycle and reuse materials where I can in the studio. And so I'm using a glue brush, and I'm going to start from about the center and work my way out all the way to the edge. Of course, this glue is clear, so you're probably not seeing much. And as soon as glue gets in contact with paper, it starts to stretch and morph because paper absorbs moisture. And so I want to make sure I cover the whole thing. And of course, it might start to curl. One thing that's really cool about nori paste is you can pre-paste objects like this and then use it for printmaking later, and if you have like a moist paper, anyway. But for collage, we're just going to work very quickly. So I make sure I do it on something like a surface like this, and I usually have a separate surface for where I'm going to be gluing it to. So, as I said before, the best way to get things to stick. So I want to make sure, for this video, I'm keeping things close, but you might want to have a separate spot for gluing and an area for the work itself. So you don't get glue on like one side of this. So I'm going to glue this here. Now, before it goes down completely, I'm going to have my scrap sheet of wax paper, and you want to either grab a spare spoon in your house, or I'm going to use a bone folder, which is, you can find a lot of craft stores. And looking here, I'm already seeing that I want maybe something right behind here because that's not a lot of contrast with that. So I might just grab any old piece of paper. That looks kind of cool. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so I'll add a little bit. So as you go, you might not want to press down the edges all the way until you know for sure what you want in different spots. Okay, so I have two things. Yeah, so now that pops out a lot more. Okay, so now that this is down, it's not down yet, I'm going to take the bone folder and I'm going to work from the center out. And I like to do like the coordinates of a compass, north, south, east, west, to make sure that there's no bubbles. And the other reason I have a protective sheet between the paper and this is that, say I have a screen print on here, if I were to just take a spoon or my bone folder and scrape directly on it, I could add a lot of scratches to it that I can't like get rid of, or it'll create like a sheen and a different surface quality. So that's why I always use another sheet between when I'm buffing or when I'm burnishing. And so something like this, or if you have like a spoon, take a couple fingers, press out. You know, a larger spoon might be more helpful than this. This is for printing. And so that adding pressure and something like a bone folder will increase that chemical bonds between glue in the paper. And so I'm going to work all the way out to this extra spare sheet. Now, if something didn't completely glue all the way, you can't really help if it's in the middle, but if it's gone all the way to the edge, that's where you can possibly re-glue it. So like this, I kind of did that in a rush. That's still a little open, although maybe I'll leave it there until I know what else I'm going to put on top of here. So same thing with the matte medium. You can glue entire backs of pieces that way. So I think the biggest thing is just making sure you have something and applying pressure to it if you want to have something nice and flat. Something that you might find if you're, I do suggest that you work rather in your sketchbooks, but on that mixed media paper that I had you guys get, because it'll be a stronger substrate than your sketchbook paper. So it can withstand the weight of things being glued down onto it. So this is nice fancy printmaking paper. So as you can see, this isn't really buckling or cupping. One thing you can do if you do have like this, for example, started to cup as I glued things on here, is sometimes you can paint like an X on the back. And this is often done in, like if you're painting gesso on a board, you often paint an X, and that helps curl it back a little bit. This isn't perfect, clearly, but sometimes that'll prevent it from just like cupping all the way from the uneven moisture of the front side. So hopefully there's just a few tips that will help the quality of craft be a little bit better, and not just your like kindergarten collage. So have fun, enjoy. If your brush starts to dry, wash it. Take a break. You want to wait for the brush to dry before you use glue in it again. Oh, when cleaning glue out of brushes, use hot water.